Welcome to the Beautiful Game Plan podcast, produced by Focus Shift Films and sponsored by Welsh sports fans. I'm your host, Daniel J. Harris. I'm a filmmaker and entrepreneur working across sport, and I'm a huge fan of sports content. This podcast is my chance to meet amazing people who are doing amazing things in the sports content space and to share their stories with you in the hope that it inspires ideas. On this episode, I have the amazing Adam Thomas of Genletics, who are developing a sports tech service that helps maximise an athlete's training. Adam, welcome to the Beautiful Game Plan podcast. Can you explain to us what it is that Genletics are developing and why?
Dan, well, it's an absolute pleasure to be here, and I'll try my best to explain what we're doing. So I'll give a bit of background. So we're scientists, we're geneticists by trade, and we're just sort of entering into this sort of sports market now. What we know from our scientific background, we've known this for sort of 50 years, is that our body changes throughout the day. Like you would have experienced this, maybe you're crap in the morning, crap in the afternoon, maybe you have a lull after lunch, or maybe you're full of energy after lunch. That's your unique biology that we are tapping into. So if you take athletic ability, take an athlete, a swimmer, sprinter, a footballer, and you get them to sort of run 100 meters at different times of the day, or swim at different times of the day, even with the footballers, like we've had a look at, jump at different times of the day. Their athletic performance, whether it's jump height, for example, will be different at different times of the day. So we are interested at Genletics in defining when an athlete is at their best in a day. So we've developed this tool. Being a geneticist, we kind of realized that information would be genetics based. You're an individual because of your genetics, because of your DNA, because of your kind of unique environment as well. So we've developed this tool that measures and predicts when an athlete will be at their physical best in a day. So if you can determine when that is, your body is ready to perform, so your performance is best. And what we're also finding now is that your strain is reduced. So less strain means less injury. And of course, that's a big plus in the elite sports market now, because injuries are a massive and very, very expensive problem. So we're thinking athletes know how to train, coaches know how to train, but we could just give them that information to tell them when to train. So this tool that we've developed is a very simple swab-based thing. Much better than a COVID, lateral flow test. You don't have to stick it up your nose, it's just in the mouth. Do that throughout the day, and then we can report when that athlete should train for maximum performance and reduce strain. So what we're keen to do as geneticists, we think genetics is almost the answer to pretty much everything to do with human health and human performance. But it's no good it being stuck in the lab. For the benefit of us. We got to get it out there to benefit athletes. And we'd love to work with, obviously, Welsh athletes first and foremost, being Welsh. But of course, any athlete we think could and should benefit from our analysis.
Fantastic. So it's all down to the genetics then, what sort of person you are. So some people are morning people, some people are afternoon people. Like for me, I like to go to the gym first thing in the morning. That gets me kind of, gets the body moving, gets the brain kind of moving. And then I feel a lot more productive across the day. And that's down to my genetics then, is it?
Yeah, it is. That plays a big part, but your environment does as well. Of course, you're probably trained yourself to wake up at a certain time in the day, or if you've got kids like I have, my body clock now starts at 4 o'clock in the morning, whether I like it or not, because that's when the kids are knocking at the bedroom door. So your environment plays a certain role in this as well, and that's what we tap into at our analysis. We give you a complete picture. The good thing is that our analysis is objective. So what we found is that we asked footballers, when in the day do you think you will jump highest? And they said, I'm a morning person, I'll jump highest in the morning. I'm an afternoon person, I'll jump highest in the afternoon. Well, 50% of them were wrong. So you can't really rely on your perception. So I always thought I was a morning person. And I did a test for me, and it came out sort of early afternoon is when my peak time is to train. And I told that to my wife, and she said, "Well, yeah, that makes sense. You're rubbish in the morning. You don't speak for the first hour." I'm like, "Oh, right, fine." I thought I was quite a good get up and go kind of guy, you know? So perception is definitely a factor in perhaps misleading you to thinking when you're at your best. So that's why we wanted this, yeah, complete objective molecular measure of when you are actually at your physical best.
Rather than relying on our internal bias and how we see ourselves and what how we perceive the world around us. You're like, no, actually, these are the genetics, these are the facts. Your perception might be wrong, and then you help people understand where and when they're kind of their best and at their peak performance.
That's it. That's it. But I think there are different objectives with that because, of course, you know, at the elite end, it's not necessarily like a mental preparation type of exercise. It's more of a, you know, performance enhancement kind of exercise. Whereas if you go to the gym in the morning, you're looking then to boost your performance later on in the day, wake yourself up, perhaps get the endorphins flowing. So that, you know, we can't really argue with that. If you like working out in the morning, you know, going for a run and things like this to get you ready for the day, then that's absolutely fine. But there could still be a better time in the day to do that if you wanted to run 5K the fastest or run a marathon the fastest. We can kind of tell you when in the day you'll be at your best to achieve that objective.
And I suppose that's elite performance, isn't it? That's marginal gains.
Yeah,
So for me, I'm not running a marathon anytime soon. I'm not playing professional sport anytime soon. For me, exercise keeps the body moving, helps me kind of get up and going for the day, keeps me healthy. Whereas when you're talking about elite athletes, they're looking for those marginal gains. They're looking for those 1%. So that's when training at 8 o'clock in the morning for them might deliver a certain amount of performance, but 2 o'clock in the afternoon gives them that extra 1% or 2%, which can be the difference between being good and the best, between being a sprinter who wins gold medal and someone who wins silver medal, perhaps. So it's those marginal gains at that kind of peak level, is it then? That's what you're saying?
exactly that, exactly that. But some of the footballers we looked at, some of these gains are marginal. You know, just take jump height as like a nice easy example. You know, somebody changed by like zero point 0.2 centimeters, you know, from morning to evening, a very, very small difference. But one player changed by 20 centimeters. And you think, crikey, that's enormous. So it all depends on the player and yeah, it's completely individual, really, how much improvement you will get if you find out when you are at your best, really. So yeah, you know, it's still emerging technology. We've known a lot about this in terms of how your body does change, but trying to be able to predict it and trying to measure it and make that information accessible, we think we're kind of at the forefront of this, really.
It's absolutely incredible. It's really fascinating. And I'm surprised that more professional athletes and clubs aren't kind of working with this and kind of looking at this sort of stuff. So who are you working with at the moment then? What sort of tests and trials are you doing?
Yeah, so we've been lucky enough, really, to have some early adopters that we're astonished to be working with. So Ospreys Rugby have been incredible, and they've allowed amazing access to their athletes. So we're testing them throughout the season to see how a late kickoff has a knock-on effect on their timing, how an early kickoff has the same effect pre-season versus within the season. I'm also working with FAW as well, and again, they've been brilliant in allowing us access to their athletes. And for us, working with squads like that means greater numbers of participants, which it helps our data as scientists. The more participants we have, the better it is. We're currently talking with Welsh Athletics to put in a program of testing after the Olympics to lead up to the next Commonwealth Games and Olympic Games. So we're gaining traction, gaining credibility, which is fantastic for us because over the last few years we've been head down in the lab developing this tool, and now we can kind of start seeing how it can be practically applied. We are amazed actually that it's teams that we've been working with, because obviously from a coach's perspective, you think, how are you going to manage a squad if 50 players have different peak times of training, when it's a team sport? But there are certain aspects of training that can be individualized. And there's a Premier League club that we've been chatting to, and they're looking to individualize their strength training, for example. But a large part will be rehabilitation, trying to get a player back, an injured player back If you can rehab at the time of day when their body is at its best, at its prime sort of physiology, can you get them back playing quicker? Which of course is a massive pain point for coaches and clubs at the moment.
Absolutely. And I suppose you're looking at how different times of kickoff, different days affect different players, as well as a manager. You could be thinking, I've got this player and maybe he's a little bit injury prone or she's a little injury prone. I need to manage them so I can get the best out of them. I know that a late kickoff is going to put too much strain on their body. I'll put someone else in. And I think like I'm a Cardiff City fan. And like having Aaron Ramsey at Cardiff City is absolutely amazing. I think he's an incredible player, but he suffers with injuries. So if Cardiff City could be looking at this data and going like, oh, we know we can't get Aaron playing 50 games a season, but if they can pick which games is gonna best suit his genetics and where he's gonna be strongest and avoid when he's gonna be weakest. Like if evening is no good for him, right? Midweek Tuesday, we're away at Sunderland. Let's rest Aaron for that. Let's play him on Saturday at 3 o'clock. Or if weirdly enough, his body performs at its worst at 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, which would be terrible for a footballer. You could say, well, let's keep him on a subs bench on a Saturday. Let's use him kind of midweek. The more information you've got as a manager, as a club, the more tools you've got to enhance performance, avoid injury, bring players back from injury. The further your spend goes on your squad, I suppose, isn't it? Because instead of thinking, right, well, I'm going to need three players in that position, and that costs us more money. I've got two players, but I understand their genetics, understand their strengths and weaknesses better. So I can manage that across the season. And maybe a smaller squad goes a little bit further, or there's less injuries, which mean there's less strain on the entire squad. And that at the end of a season, when you're playing 50, 60 games across three different competitions, can have a massive impact on a club. So are they the sort of things that you're looking at in terms of squads then? How a manager, how a sports science team can get the best out of individual players, which all adds up to the squad and the season.
Yeah, exactly that. I couldn't have put it better myself, really. Yeah. It's all about that sort of knowledge informed decisions. If you kind of say, well, why do you train at 11 o'clock? It's, oh, well, because that's what we've always done. Right. Well, is that the best time for your squad? Let's find that out. And you can stratify squads then as well. You can break them down into groups of players that share a peak time. And yeah, it's all about that knowing when that player is at their best, when their body is ready. So there's less strain. Less strain, reduces the risk of injuries in the first place. And it's all then about, yeah, decision making and strategizing, as you said, picking players at the right time, you know, for performance benefits and yeah, reduces their chance of entering that red zone where injuries
That's
are more likely.
That's it. And I think there's probably not been enough work in this kind of field in sport, as there in the past. Like I remember it was only about 6, 7 years ago. I was listening to Talk Sport and Emma Hayes was talking about how Chelsea Football Club were like the only club in English women's football that were looking at how a woman's menstrual cycle affects their performance and their chances of injury and stuff like that. And that's not that long ago. There should be more of this going on in sport, really, with all the advances in sports science, shouldn't there? What more can clubs be doing then? How do you work with these clubs? Is it a one-off thing, or do you build ongoing relationships where you can monitor people? What is it that Genletics can bring to a club then, and how does that work?
Yeah. Well, this is it because, you're seeing that injuries are increasing, in the game. And the cost of injuries is actually through the roof. So we're of the opinion that whatever tech is currently used to enhance performance is not necessarily addressing the strain on the player. And that's fundamentally, we think that's because clubs just don't know enough about individual players. That's a human geneticist. That's my passion really, is knowing more about a particular individual. You know more about someone, you can get more out of them, basically. So your point on the menstrual cycle, we have done some preliminary data with Cardiff City women, actually. We've got very, very little data, but that, it's opening up a can of worms. And we see that if you test a player, different days of their menstrual cycle, their peak time to train changes. So if you can better inform that, you can modify when when they're training, or perhaps when they're pushing at their hardest, and you think, well, actually, now is not the right time because you're on day 18 of your cycle. Let's just do something else instead. Then you can mitigate that risk of straining your player too much, because there's a misalignment of when they should be training and when they are training. And that misalignment could be greater on different days of the menstrual cycle. And it's all of that, knowledge is power. We can inform those decisions. So what we typically with a club, we sort of have different sort of service level contracts, really, depending on how frequently they want to test their athletes. Obviously, as a true scientist, the more times you test, the more data you collect, the stronger that data set is going to be. But there's always a limit to, budgetary financial limit, really. So we want to test as frequently as the budget allows to give you as complete a picture as possible of how that athlete changes throughout a season. For example, if you've got a late kickoff, how does that affect that individual player? If you've got to change time zones, if you're in international competition, how long has that player got to be in that new time zone to adjust so that their cycle, their body clock is back to where it should be, and this peak time to train is where it should be.
That's really interesting. I hadn't even thought about that. Do you mean those that are playing kind of European football, or are playing lower level kind of EFL football, but are playing international football for different countries across Europe, across the world now? You're changing time zones. So if your body is at its peak when you've been awake for 5 hours, but then you're in a different time zone where there's a 4 hour difference or a 9 hour difference or whatever that is, that's going to have an impact on people then. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly that. Yes. What we started with this is a very simple proposition. Identify when somebody is at their best in a day. Easy. But then the more we're starting to uncover, it's more of a can of worms. We're like, actually, this is an important concept to build into our analysis. But we can sort of tailor our approach and our testing strategy to suit whatever you want, whatever information you want to find out, really.
Riverside Sports Bar with Welsh sports fans is Newport's premier sports bar and has been voted best sports bar at the Welsh Hospitality Awards. With a range of huge TVs, an incredible food menu with burgers, dirty fries and much more, including vegan options, it is the place to watch sport. Visit www.riversidesportsbarnewport.com to find out more.
Would then a player's ability to train or his peak time change across a season, perhaps then, because start of the season they're a little bit fresher? Would the temperature change? So across Christmas, the temperature's colder, your body's working differently in order to mitigate the cold. And then summer, it's warm. Well, say it's warm, it's June today, and it's not that nice outside. But those different temperatures, different climates, different time zones, all these things can affect a player's performance. So the more data you've got, player A performs best when they've been awake for 5 hours. So that means whatever time zone they're in, you need to adjust. But also in summer, they're better at this time, and at winter they're better at this time. And then at the end of the season, when there's a little more strain on the body and they're more tired, it's this time and this time. So you've got a more complete picture of that individual across 365 days, across different time zones, across different climates and kind of weather situations. It feels like an absolute minefield. There's a million different kind of changing bits of information which can impact that. So how do you go about kind of gathering all that and pulling that together?
Yeah, well, it's still all down on that individual. So you just need to focus on that individual. And if that individual is changing a time zone, then we'll just test them before and after they cross that time zone. So it can be, it opens up a can of worms, but it can be simplified, and we can come up with a really neat and simple strategy to measure this. But your point on sort of like, summer and winter, the biggest factor there is light. So obviously, the days are longer. Sorry, hang on. No, the lights are longer in winter. So you might have seen Wolverhampton Wanderers players. They were walking around with these light glasses that were shining a bright light into their eyes. So coming up to a late kickoff at 8 o'clock, it's dark over winter. So those lights glasses were obviously trying to trick their body to think that actually it's 8 o'clock, but it's, even though it's dark outside, it's not time for going to bed. You still need to be alert. You still need to be, performing. Our point of view is, well, does that actually work? In theory, I reckon it does. There's definitely going to be a placebo effect, if anything else, and placebo effects are incredibly strong. But there could be some players that might not need that. They might naturally peak at sort of 8 o'clock in the winter anyway. So it's all about that information about that one particular player. Does that player need those glasses at all? Does that player need to be wearing them 4 hours ahead of kickoff, 2 hours ahead of kickoff? And that information is what we want to be able to test and to be able to derive for a particular player to make sure that it's working, so you can almost change when a squad can peak. And if you can change when that squad can peak, you can change it depending on when that competition or that kickoff time is. And that's going to be the next level of our analysis. Once you know when your peak is, how do you hack it? How do you change it to suit the schedule?
Wow, like mind blown something. I never thought about that. Like when you think about it, like your own life in the winter, you get home from work 5, 6 o'clock, it's already dark. You kind of think, I have my tea, put my pajamas on, put the telly on, and you're kind of ready for bed earlier. In the summer, when it's still light at 9 o'clock at night, you could be sat outside in a pair of shorts, you're still kind of up and you're doing stuff.
Yeah.
Your brain adjusts to whether it's light or dark. And that's why in the winter, when you're trying to get up in the morning to go to the gym at 7 a.m. and it's still dark, you kind of wake up and you go, oh, it's dark outside. I shouldn't be getting up. Well, it's in the summer. You can get up at 6 o'clock and go to the gym because you wake up and it's like your brain goes, hey, sun's up, we're up, let's get on with it. I never thought about it that way. That's absolutely mental. So those evening kickoffs in the winter, actually, some of those players might not be performing to their best because their brain's gone, it's dark, tools down. Do you know what I mean? Kind of the day's over. Let's get back to resting.
Exactly that. So your body in the winter, later, at sort of 8 o'clock at night, is going, right, get a hot chocolate, tuck yourself in. And these footballers are going, no, I got 5 goals to score here. So there's a disconnect between what your body is ready to do and what you need it to do. Hence, higher strain, more chance of injury.
And I will just say as well, if you're working with players that are scoring 5 goals in an evening, can you recommend them to Cardiff City, please? Because I think our strikers were scoring 5 a season last year. So, mention that to the boys down at Cardiff. I'm sure they'll take a look.
I can't promise that our analysis will make your strikers score 5 goals. Okay, that's a disclaimer.
Oh my God, this is absolutely fascinating. I never thought about it before. And and I suppose then that kind of brings me to my next question. Like, is this just for elite athletes, or can an overweight middle-aged gym goer like myself learn something? Well, I think I already have, so I've answered my own question there. But yeah, what can the average person take away from this?
Yeah, you're not middle-aged. Crikey.
I'm 40.
Well,
That's middle age. It's longer than I thought I was going to live, so maybe I'm beyond middle age.
So fundamentally, the idea of this was from an efficiency point of view, because I work out, I enjoy going to the gym, but I also enjoy not going to the gym and doing other things. So I wanted to make my training more efficient. I thought, is there a best time of day for me to train where I can spend 20 minutes in the gym and get more out of it than if I was there for an hour? Fundamentally, from a lazy perspective, but
laziness has driven this science. I love it.
It's the mother of invention. Yeah. So I was thinking, biologically, when is my body ready to perform, and can I therefore go to the gym at that point of the day and get more out of it? And then, of course, COVID happened, and there was this sort of like working from home, and then people had this asynchronous kind of working day where they might start work at 7 o'clock, stop until 10 o'clock, work until 10 o'clock, have a bit of a break. And this was a new kind of pattern for working. And I thought, well, this analysis fits in quite well there. If people can decide where they want to go in to the gym in the day, go when you're at your best, and then don't bother going at any other time. But then we started to realize that actually the coaches and elite athletes need to know this information. I assumed that they did. But of course, our analysis involves some pretty serious molecular sort of profiling, which was completely inaccessible to them. So we've started going into then this more elite sports market and away from everyday users. But we do want to bring it back to everyday users, to help their training more efficient. And of course, these elite athletes were not always elite athletes. There's semi-professionals here that our analysis can really, really help. If you want to do like a combine, like Louis Rees-Zammit, he was disappointed with running 0.44 seconds. He said he was running a 0.42. Well, my brain is immediately thinking, what time of day did he run 0.42? And was it different to when he ran 0.44? Because knowing when to train, when to perform will make those types of differences. So we're thinking for elite or semi-professional athletes that are doing these combines to get into a squad, we can really help tell them when to do those combines to get the best out of their performance.
I just had an amazing idea.
Okay.
Can your science predict when it's going to be best to drink beer and get less of a hangover? Is that something your molecular science can figure out? So I know if I drink on a Thursday, I get less of a hangover than if I drink on a Saturday, or if I drink during the day, I'll be better off than if I drink late at night. That's something the general public will really get behind, I'm sure.
I think you're right. I tell you what, I'm not going to enter that space anytime soon, right? But I tell you what, there probably will be value in that because your metabolism changes and alcohol is metabolized. So there will be different times of the day where you metabolize alcohol differently. But I'm not going to give any advice on when you should be drinking because I don't know, it might come out as 9 o'clock in the morning, and I don't want to be having those sort of letters of complaint because I've lost my job because I was drinking at 9 o'clock in the morning or something.
Well, back last year, well, the year before last now, around the World Cup in 2022, at Eat Sleep Media, we were developing our own Wales Away North Wales sea salt and caramel vodka with Cardiff Distillery. And when I went down there and I was chatting to them about it, they were like, take away the sample, try it at different days, different times, because vodka tastes different on a Friday evening to how it does on a Monday morning. And I thought, well, yeah, of course it does. Who's drinking vodka on a Monday morning?
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Maybe,
very, very true.
maybe it's down to their genetics, and their
Yes.
peak drinking hours are 9 till 11 on a Monday morning. Perhaps maybe I was judging them, and it was a molecular thing rather than a preference thing.
It's worth a conversation because that drink sounds absolutely delicious. So I'll be more than happy to volunteer for that study.
Fantastic. Well, this has been absolutely incredible. I've learned so much like on this podcast, and it's got my brain thinking like, oh, I wonder about this, I wonder about that. So I'd be very interested in kind of following Genletics' story and kind of seeing what you guys are doing down the line. For those that are at home and kind of interested, what have you guys got coming up? What are you guys doing in the future? Where can people find more information about Genletics and what you're doing?
Yes, well, actually, we hope that we've got a big, bright future which extends beyond athletic performance. We see that is the lowest hanging fruit at the moment, just because the data is so well defined. 50 years old, and obviously a lot more recent than that as well. But we want to extend that into other aspects of human behavior. When should you take an exam? When is your workforce at its most productive? And we just think that efficiency can be massively improved using our sort of analysis. Lots of R&D left to do in those sort of respects, but that's where we want to get to in the future. So yeah, well, we got our website up and running. So that's at www.genletics.co.uk. Also on LinkedIn, Adam Thomas, CEO of Genletics. So we'd love to have a few more contacts and connections there. And we're raising investment at the moment as well. So any investors out there, yeah, give us a shout.
Fantastic. And have you got a big event coming up soon? Am I right in saying?
Yes, of course. I would have forgotten about that. Thanks, Dan. Absolutely, yeah. So this is going on the back of what we were talking about menstrual cycles. So we've got a GB rower coming down who is a research fellow who has been tracking menstrual cycle. Because believe it or not, I was surprised to learn that we don't really track the menstrual cycle particularly well. And with the advent of wearable technologies, there's still a lot of data to be had there to best track an individual's menstrual cycle. So The GB Row is coming down to talk about her research career in menstrual cycle, and also how she juggles that with being an elite Olympic athlete. And we've got a stellar lineup of a panel talking about the educational piece around female performance, biological female performance, aspects of social media abuse and psychology. And we've got a couple of coaches coming down as well from the world of football and rugby who will talk to us about the practical aspects of enhancing female performance around, or perhaps even alongside or with the menstrual cycle.
Fantastic. And where and when is that? Can
Yes.
anybody go along, or?
Yeah. I can send out an Eventbrite a link, actually, so you can send that out to the audience. So yeah, that's going to be Friday the 12th of July, 10:30, and that's near our labs on Mainly Road in Cardiff.
Fantastic. Yeah, it sounds like an amazing event, and it sounds like you guys are doing some really, really interesting stuff that can help not just professional athletes, but can help everyone in all walks of life a little further down the line. So I wish you all the best in that, and hopefully you can raise some finance and go and do some amazing kind of life-changing stuff by the sounds of it.
Well, thank you, Dan. Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. So yeah, really appreciate it. Cheers.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much to those at home that are listening or watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. And yeah, I'd say go and find out a bit more about Genletics. It's a super interesting company doing amazing things. Thank you very much, all. Bye. Don't forget to like and share this episode and subscribe to the channel for more content.